Whatever man conceives to be true, he immediately conceives to be real, that is, to have an objective existence, because originally only the real is true to him, true in opposition to what is merely conceived, dreamed, and imagined. The idea of being, of existence, is the original idea of truth, or, originally, man makes truth dependent on existence. Subsequently, existence depends on truth. Now, God is the nature of man regarded as absolute truth, the truth of man. But God, or what is the same thing, religion, is various as are the conditions under which man conceives this his nature, regards it as the highest being. These conditions, then, under which man conceives God, are to him the truth, and for that reason they are also the highest existence, or rather they are the existence itself, for only the empathic, the highest existence, is existence, and deserves this name. Therefore God is an existent, real being, on the very same ground that he is a particular, definite being. For the qualities of God are nothing else than the essential qualities of man himself, and a particular man is what he is, has his existence, his reality, only in his particular conditions. Take away from the Greek the quality of being Greek, and you take away his existence. On this ground, it is true that for a definite positive religion, that is, relatively, the certainty of the existence of God is immediate, for just as involuntarily as necessarily as the Greek was a Greek, so necessarily were his gods beings, so necessarily were the real existent beings. Religion is that conception of the nature of the world and of man which is essential to, such as identical with, a man's nature. But man does not stand above this his necessary conception. On the contrary, it stands above him. It animates, determines, and governs him. The necessity of a proof, of a middle term to unite qualities with existence, the possibility of a doubt, is abolished. Only that which is apart from my own being is capable of being doubted by me. How then can I doubt of God, who is my being? To doubt of God is to doubt myself. Only when God is thought of abstractly, when its predicates are the results of philosophic abstraction, arises the distinction or separation between subject and predicate, existence and nature, arises the fiction that the existence or the subject is something else, that the predicate something immediate, indubitable, in distinction from the predicate, which is held to be doubtful. But this is only a fiction. A God who has abstract predicates has also an abstract existence. Existence being varies with varying qualities. The identity of the subject and predicate is clearly evidenced by the progressive development of religion, which is identical with the progressive development of human culture. So long as man is in a mere state of nature, so long is God a mere nature God, a personification of some natural force. Where man inhabits houses, he also encloses his gods in temples. The temples is only a manifestation of the value which man attached to beautiful buildings. Temples in honor of religion are in truth temples in honor of architecture. With the emerging of man from the state of savagery and wildness to one of culture, with the distinction being what is fitting for man and what is not fitting, arises simultaneously the distinction between that which is fitting and that which is not fitting for God. God is the idea of majesty, of the highest dignity. The religious sentiment is a sentiment of supreme fitness. The later, more cultured artists of Greece were the first to embody in its statues of the gods the ideas of dignity, of spiritual grandeur, of imperturbable repose and serenity. But why were these qualities in their view attributes, predicates of God? Because they were in themselves regarded by the Greeks as divinities. Why did those artists exclude all disgusting and low passions? Because they perceived them to be unbecoming, unworthy, unhuman, and consequently ungodlike. The Homeric gods eat and drink. That implies eating and drinking as a divine pleasure. Physical strength is an attribute of the Homeric gods. Zeus is the strongest of the gods. Why? Because physical strength, in and by itself, was regarded as something glorious and divine. To the ancient Germans, the highest virtues were those of the warrior. Therefore, their supreme god was the god of war, Odin. War, the original or oldest law. Not the attribute of the divinity, but the divineness or deity of the attributes, is the first true divine being. Thus what theology and philosophy have held to be God, the absolute, the infinite, is not God, but that which they have held not to be God is God, namely the attribute, the quality, and whatever has reality. Hence, he alone is the true atheist to whom the predicates of the divine being, for example, love, wisdom, and justice, are nothing. Not he to whom merely the subject of those predicates is nothing. And in no wise is the negation of the subject necessarily also the negation of the predicates considered in themselves. These have an intrinsic, independent reality. They force their own recognition upon man by their very nature. They are self-evident truths to him. They prove, they attest themselves. It does not follow that goddesses, that goodness, justice, wisdom, and chimeras because the existence of God is a chimera, nor truth because this is a truth. The idea of God is dependent on the idea of justice and of benevolence. A God who is not benevolent, not just, not wise, is no God. But the converse does not hold. The fact is not that a quality is divine because God has it, but that God has it because it is in itself divine. Because without it, God would be a defective being. Justice, wisdom, in general, every quality which constitutes the divinity of God is determined and known by itself independently. But the idea of God is determined by the qualities which have thus been previously judged to be worthy of the divine nature. Only in the case which I identify God in justice, in which I think of God immediately as the reality of the idea of justice, is the idea of God self-determined. But if God as a subject is determined while the quality and the predicate is the determining, then in truth the rank of the Godhead is due not to the subject, but to the predicate. Not until several and those contradictory attributes are united in one being, and this being is conceived as personal, the personality being thus brought into special prominence. Not until then is the origin of religion lost sight of. Is it forgotten that what the activity of the reflective power has converted into the predicate, distinguishable or separable from the subject, was originally a true subject? Thus the Greeks and Romans deified accidents as substances, virtues, state of mind, passions as independent beings. Man, especially the religious man, is to himself the measure of all things, of all reality. Whatever strongly impresses a man, whatever produces an unusual effect on his mind, if it be only a peculiar, inexplicable sound or note, he personifies as a divine being. Religion embraces all the objects of the world. Everything existing has been an object of religious reverence. In nature and consciousness of religion, there is nothing else than what lies in the nature of man and his consciousness of himself and of the world. Religion has no material exclusively its own. In Rome, even the passions of fear and terror had their temples. The Christians also made mental phenomena into independent beings, their own feelings into qualities of things, the passions which governed them into powers which govern the world. In short, predicates of their own nature, whether recognized as such or not, into independent subjective existences. Devils, kobolds, witches, ghosts, angels were sacred truths as long as the religious spirit held undivided sway over mankind.